The discovery. The universe had always felt vast to humanity, a never-ending expanse of stars and unknowns. But no one on Earth had ever anticipated the event that would forever alter their understanding of the cosmos. It started with an anomaly, an odd, untraceable signal that surged through Earth's communications satellites, bending every piece of technology it touched. For days, scientists struggled to decipher the message. The signal wasn't like anything they had ever encountered, neither natural nor artificial in the conventional sense. Dr. Naomi Evans, a seasoned astrobiologist known for her work in extraterrestrial communication, was the first to realize that the signal wasn't random. It was deliberate. Through her expertise, Naomi quickly assembled a team of linguists, physicists, and data analysts to help decode it. The hours were long, the work grueling, but slowly, they pieced it together. It wasn't a mere signal, but a call for help, a desperate cry from the stars. When the message finally became clear, the team gathered in Naomi's lab, their faces a mixture of excitement and fear. The message was from an alien race, and it spoke of an apex predator, one so fearsome that entire species had fallen to it. But what struck them most wasn't the predator itself, it was the context of the message. The alien race was not begging for assistance against this creature alone. They were asking for help to stop it from reaching Earth. Naomi stared at the screen, her eyes wide. "This is it," she murmured. "This is first contact. And it's not just about exploration. It's about survival." The words on the screen spoke of a creature called the Xalok, a race of highly intelligent, hyper-aggressive beings capable of bending reality itself to their will. They were an ancient species, known for their strength and their ruthlessness. They had once ruled the stars, but now they were fighting for survival, scattered across the galaxy after their world was destroyed. "Why us?" Naomi asked aloud, her voice full of uncertainty. "Why is Earth the target of this predator's hunt? And why would they come to us for help?" Her team remained silent, their expressions dark with apprehension. There were no easy answers, only more questions. But Naomi knew one thing, they had no choice but to respond. The message was clear. The Xalok were already on their way, and they were not just coming for the aliens, they were coming for Earth. The next few days passed in a blur of frantic planning. Nations around the world were informed of the message, and the United Nations swiftly convened an emergency council. Naomi was appointed to lead the Earth's response efforts, but even she couldn't predict what lay ahead. The aliens, who had sent the message, were not here yet, but their arrival was imminent. Time was running out. In the midst of the chaos, Naomi received a visit from the leader of the alien delegation, Xalok. He was tall and imposing, his skin shimmering like liquid silver under the light. His eyes, however, were filled with both desperation and hope. "You are our last hope," Xalok said, his voice low but urgent. "We come to you not as conquerors, but as survivors. The Xalok are unlike any enemy you have ever encountered. They will stop at nothing to consume everything in their path. And we have nowhere else to turn." Naomi listened carefully, her mind racing. She had heard of species like the Xalok in the stories of ancient civilizations, creatures that consumed everything in their wake, leaving nothing but ashes. But the fact that the Xalok had chosen Earth as the next place to hunt, was it a coincidence or something more? She couldn't be sure. "We're not prepared for something like this," Naomi replied. "We've only just learned about you and your people. How do we know we can trust you?" Xalok paused, a flicker of pain passing across his features. "I understand your doubts. But know this, the Xalok do not simply destroy. They erase all trace of existence. They bend time and space to their will. They will make it as if Earth never existed. And when they come, they will not stop until every last one of us is gone." The room grew quiet. Naomi's mind raced with the implications of what Xalok had said. A creature that could erase not only life but the very memory of existence. It was unimaginable. And yet, it was all too real. "We can help you," Naomi said finally, her voice firm. "But we need more information. We need to know everything you can tell us about this predator, how it operates, and how we can stop it." Xalok nodded solemnly. "I will give you everything we know. And more. Time is short, Dr. Evans. We must act quickly." The next few days were a whirlwind. Naomi and her team worked around the clock, absorbing everything the aliens could teach them about the Xalok and their terrifying abilities. It wasn't long before they understood the full scope of the danger. The Xalok didn't just hunt for food, they hunted for power. They were capable of manipulating energy, bending the very fabric of reality to suit their needs. Their presence was like a blight, leaving entire star systems devoid of life. Naomi's heart sank as she read through the data. The Xalok were not just a threat to the aliens who had contacted them, they were a threat to everything humanity held dear. And if they couldn't find a way to stop them, Earth would be next. "We can't fight them with weapons alone," Naomi said to her team, her voice tinged with urgency. "We need to think smarter, faster. If we're going to survive, we'll have to outwit them. And we'll need help from the very people who contacted us." The team fell silent, the weight of the challenge ahead settling heavily on their shoulders. There was no turning back now. Earth had been thrust into a war it wasn't ready for, against an enemy unlike any it had faced before. And yet, despite the overwhelming odds, Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had something that the Xalok didn't: creativity. Adaptability. The ability to change when necessary and to think outside the box. It was this unyielding human spirit that could make all the difference. "We'll find a way," she said, her resolve hardening. "Together, we'll stop them." The discovery of the Xalok and their terrible power had shaken the foundations of everything humanity thought it knew. Earth had been thrust into a galactic conflict, and Naomi Evans knew that the survival of their species would depend on how quickly they could adapt. She had made her decision. The battle had begun, and there was no turning back. Unlikely allies. The days that followed the revelation of the Xalok threat were a blur. Governments scrambled to prepare for the worst, while Naomi and her team worked tirelessly to devise a plan. But as the reality of their situation sank in, Naomi couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency and unease. The Xalok weren't just an enemy, they were an unstoppable force of nature. What could a fledgling human race, still reeling from its own internal struggles, possibly do against such an entity? In an emergency session of the United Nations, Naomi stood before the world's leaders. The weight of her position was almost unbearable. Everyone was looking to her for answers, for hope. But the truth was, she didn't have all the answers. No one did. "We have to understand our enemy first," she began, her voice steady but laced with an undeniable edge of anxiety. "The Xalok are not like anything we've ever encountered. They don't just destroy, they erase. They manipulate time and space itself. And their technology is far beyond anything we have." She paused, letting the gravity of her words settle in. "Our first priority is to secure our planet. We need to fortify our defenses. But we also need to learn how to think like them, how they perceive the universe. I believe we can find a way to fight back, but we need to use their weaknesses against them." The room was silent. Each leader seemed lost in their own thoughts, some with grim expressions, others with fear written on their faces. Finally, a voice spoke up. "What about the aliens who contacted us?" It was the Russian delegate, Viktor Petrov. "Can they help us? Are they strong enough to defend us?" Naomi nodded, but with a hint of reluctance. "They're survivors. The Xalok destroyed their home world, and now they're scattered. They're not warriors in the traditional sense. They don't have the military power to take on the Xalok alone. But, they are our allies. And they know more about the Xalok than anyone." The delegates murmured amongst themselves, clearly unsure of how to proceed. Naomi had been working closely with the alien delegation led by Xalok, but there was still much to learn. The aliens, despite their advanced technology, had never fully grasped how humanity fought. Earthlings fought with grit, with a resourcefulness that was unparalleled in the galaxy. Naomi knew that this trait could turn the tide in their favor, but it would take time. Meanwhile, aboard the alien mothership, Naomi found herself standing next to Xalok in a large command room. The walls were alive with light, pulsing and shifting, reflecting the advanced technology that the alien race used for communication and data collection. Despite the sleek, ethereal atmosphere, Naomi could sense a kind of mourning in the air. It was in the way Xalok moved, the way his silvery eyes seemed to gaze past her, as if remembering something lost. "This is the last of my people," Xalok said quietly, his voice tinged with sadness. "We are scattered, refugees in our own galaxy. The Xalok destroyed everything. Our civilization, our homeworld, they are gone. Now we are left with nothing." Naomi felt a pang of sympathy. She had read about the destruction of entire civilizations by the Xalok, but hearing it firsthand was something else entirely. Xalok's race had once been powerful, but now they were no different from Earth's most endangered species, fighting just to survive. "Then we'll help you rebuild," Naomi said, her voice firm. "And together, we'll fight the Xalok. We have to believe we can win. It's the only way forward." Xalok's expression softened, his silver skin shimmering slightly as he regarded her with something like hope. "I will do everything I can to help you, Naomi Evans. But you must understand, the Xalok will not be easy to defeat. They do not care for the lives of others. They will stop at nothing to consume everything." "I understand," Naomi replied. "But we have something they don't, human ingenuity. We're good at finding new ways to solve problems. We don't give up. Ever." Xalok seemed to consider her words for a moment before nodding. "Perhaps there is hope, after all." Back on Earth, Naomi's team had been working on a new project, one that could potentially give them the upper hand against the Xalok. With the help of the alien technology, they had begun experimenting with energy manipulation. The idea was simple in theory. If the Xalok could bend reality, then perhaps humanity could learn to counteract that power. In one of the lab's many secure chambers, Dr. Evan Hughes, Naomi's lead physicist, stood over a series of devices that hummed with energy. "We're close," he said, his voice filled with both excitement and dread. "If we can harness this power and use it strategically, we might be able to disrupt the Xalok's ability to manipulate space." Naomi nodded, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the machines. "Then let's make it happen. We don't have time to waste." But as they pushed forward with their research, another problem emerged. The Xalok had arrived. Their ship had been detected entering the solar system. Naomi's heart raced. It was only a matter of time before they came for Earth. "We need to be ready," Naomi said urgently, turning to her team. "The Xalok are here. And once they land, there will be no time for second chances." With the alien race's guidance and humanity's resourcefulness, they had managed to create something formidable, a defense system that could disrupt the Xalok's ability to manipulate time and space. But it wasn't enough. They needed to develop a plan to fight the Xalok directly, something that would tip the scales in their favor. "I know we don't have much time," Naomi said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "But this is our chance. We're not just fighting for Earth's survival, we're fighting for the future of the galaxy. If we stand together, we can stop them. We have to believe that we can win." The clock was ticking, and the war for Earth had only just begun. As the Xalok's massive ships loomed on the horizon, Naomi felt a surge of determination. The fate of humanity, and of countless others, was in their hands. But she knew one thing for sure, Earth wasn't going down without a fight. In the quiet of the night, with the alien mothership hovering just beyond the atmosphere, Naomi stared out into the stars. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain, humans weren't just survivors. They were fighters. And the Xalok would soon learn that. The first strike. The war had begun, and with it came the endless feeling of anticipation and dread. Earth was no longer a peaceful home, now, it was a battlefield. As the Xalok ships hovered ominously above their atmosphere, the world's governments banded together, pooling resources, and preparing for an onslaught that could destroy everything they had ever known. But in this chaos, there was something stirring, a deep, unshakable confidence that came from the people themselves. It wasn't just the leaders or the soldiers who believed in humanity's ability to survive, it was every single person on Earth. The determination was tangible. They knew what they were fighting for, and they were ready to face whatever came. Naomi and her team were stationed in a command center in the heart of the newly built Earth Defense Network facility. It was a massive structure, its walls lined with holographic displays, each showing different aspects of the enemy's movements and capabilities. Every minute, more reports came in, updates on Xalok fleet movements, energy readings, and even intercepted communications. But the news wasn't good. The Xalok were preparing to launch an attack. "They're not waiting around," Dr. Hughes remarked, his eyes scanning the holographic map of Earth's orbit. "Their ships are deploying smaller vessels. They'll be here within the hour." Naomi clenched her fists. They had no illusions about what was coming. The Xalok were not just invaders, they were merciless conquerors. But they had the advantage of surprise. Humanity was still recovering from its initial shock, and while the alien allies had provided advanced technology, it was clear that the real fight would still be up to Earth. "We're ready," Naomi replied, her voice tight with determination. "We've prepared for this. We'll make sure they know who they're dealing with." Outside, in the thick of the chaos, Earth's military was in full mobilization. Fighter jets took off from newly established bases, their engines roaring into the sky. In space, the Earth Defense Fleet assembled, newly designed ships armed with energy weapons and defensive shields, their sleek forms cutting through the atmosphere. But it wasn't just military might that was at play. Humanity's ingenuity had allowed them to develop something far more important, the Xalok's weakness. "Are we sure this will work?" Lieutenant Sarah Griffin, one of the military leaders, asked Naomi as she stepped into the war room. "The Xalok can manipulate space itself. What if they adapt?" Naomi's gaze never wavered. "They can manipulate space, but not time. We've created a system that will disrupt their ability to bend reality. Once we've locked onto their ships, we'll force them into a temporal bubble. It will distort their ability to act. They'll be blind to what's happening. But we have to act fast." It was a risky plan, and Naomi knew it. The Xalok were far beyond Earth's technological level, but that didn't mean humanity couldn't find a way to strike back. As the fleet prepared to launch, she felt a pang of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could pull this off. On the ground, civilians had already begun to feel the tremors of the war. The air was thick with tension, and in the major cities, people huddled together in bunkers, awaiting the inevitable impact of the Xalok's first strike. Naomi's team had managed to prepare a network of underground shelters, but even that felt like little protection against the unknown. Amidst the chaos, an unexpected figure arrived in the city of New York. Xalok, the alien leader, had come to witness Earth's fight firsthand. Though his race was scattered across the galaxy, his presence was a reminder that humanity wasn't alone in this battle. Naomi met with him near the edge of Central Park, where they watched as military forces scrambled below. The sky was darkening, and the air hummed with energy. The ground shook as the first blast from the Xalok's smaller ships tore through the atmosphere. "You said the Xalok do not stop until everything is consumed," Naomi said, her voice strained. "What else should we be ready for?" Xalok's eyes glinted, his expression calm yet focused. "The Xalok are not just conquerors. They are engineers of chaos. They can disrupt our technology if they get close enough. If they engage in a full-scale attack, you will lose your ability to fight back. Naomi's heart sank at the thought. But Xalok didn't stop there. He looked out over the horizon, where the Xalok fleet had now begun to descend from the skies. They have one weakness, he said, his tone low and steady. The Xalok depend heavily on their fleet's central command. If you can infiltrate that command ship and destroy it, you'll cripple their ability to launch full-scale operations. Naomi turned to him, her eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and hope. But how? Their ships are far beyond anything we've ever encountered. Xalok reached into his cloak and produced a small device. This will help. It's a prototype weapon, one we've used to destabilize their systems in the past. It will give you a window of opportunity. But you must be quick. Once the central command is gone, the rest of their fleet will collapse. Naomi took the device from him, feeling the weight of its importance. It was a lifeline, a thread of hope in the middle of the storm. The battle began in earnest as Xalok vessels began their assault on Earth's defense network. They struck with precision, their ships sweeping through the atmosphere with unrelenting firepower. Humanity's forces engaged immediately, with fighter jets and ships launching into combat, weapons blazing. Naomi watched as the massive Xalok ships deployed their terrifying weapons, the sky lighting up with the heat of their destruction. The ground trembled beneath her feet, but she stayed focused. She had a job to do, and so did everyone else. "I'm ready," Lieutenant Griffin said over the comms, her voice tight with anxiety. "Our forces are in position. Let's take the fight to them." Naomi nodded, her fingers tight around the control panel in front of her. The first phase of their plan was already in motion, laser beams fired from Earth's fleet, cutting through the Xalok vessels, and their energy shields shimmered under the attack. But it wasn't enough. "Engage the temporal disruptor now," Naomi ordered, her eyes narrowing. "We have one shot at this." On her signal, the weapon was activated. A pulse of energy shot through space, and for a brief moment, time seemed to warp. The Xalok ships slowed, their movements jerky and disjointed. Naomi could see it on the display, an opening had formed. Now, they had to strike. "Go now," she shouted, urgency ringing in her voice. With all their might, humanity's forces pushed forward, taking advantage of the disruption. Fighters sped towards the Xalok Central Command ship, their weapons locked on target. It was a race against time. If they missed this chance, they might never get another one. In the skies above Earth, the battle raged on. Explosions lit up the horizon as the Xalok unleashed their fury, but it was clear that humanity wasn't backing down. The first strike had come, but now, the fight had truly begun. Naomi watched the chaos unfold with bated breath, knowing that their survival, and the survival of countless others, depended on the choices they made in these next few moments. The heart of the storm. The battle was escalating faster than anyone had anticipated. Earth's forces, bolstered by alien allies and advanced technology, had managed to push back the initial wave of Xalok assault ships. But the Xalok were relentless, and every victory felt fleeting as they launched more reinforcements from their massive flagship hovering in low orbit. Naomi could feel the weight of their struggle pressing down on her, time was running out. "Lieutenant Griffin," Naomi said as she watched the chaos unfold on the holographic map, "I need you to prepare a team. We're going to infiltrate the flagship. If we take that down, we'll break their command structure. It's our only chance to cripple them." Griffin nodded without hesitation, her face grim but determined. "Understood, Commander. We're ready." Meanwhile, Xalok's presence in the command center had given Naomi a strange sense of calm amid the chaos. The alien leader's quiet confidence was a sharp contrast to the panic that ran through the Earth Defense Force. Though their situation seemed dire, his belief in humanity's resilience was unwavering. "We can do this," Naomi said, turning to him. "We're not giving up. I won't let Earth fall. Not while there's a breath left in my body." Xalok gave a slight nod, his alien features almost inscrutable, but his eyes spoke volumes. I believe in you, Naomi. You humans have an ability to fight back that no one else in the galaxy has. It's a fire that burns brighter in you than anywhere else I've seen. You will win this. Just keep pushing. With those words, Naomi steeled herself. The plan was simple: breach the Xalok flagship, locate its central command hub, and destroy it. If they succeeded, they'd shatter the Xalok's ability to coordinate their forces. But if they failed, Earth would fall. The sky was alive with the sounds of battle as Naomi, Lieutenant Griffin, and a team of hand-picked soldiers made their way towards the launch bay. The Xalok fleet had made their presence known, and now it was time for humanity to prove that they wouldn't go down without a fight. As Naomi walked through the corridors of the Earth Defense Network facility, her mind raced with the enormity of the task ahead. The Xalok flagship was an impenetrable fortress. Not only was it armed with weapons far beyond humanity's capabilities, but it was also shielded by a field of energy that could nullify any attack. The only way in would be through sheer force and precision. "Commander, we're ready to launch," Griffin said, snapping Naomi from her thoughts. "The team is prepped and the ship is locked on target." Naomi nodded. "Good. Let's move." The team boarded the sleek, black fighter ship, its engines roaring to life as it shot up into the sky. The massive Xalok flagship loomed ahead, its sheer size dwarfing anything humanity had ever built. It was a beast in space, a symbol of the Xalok's technological superiority. Naomi's stomach twisted with the weight of what they were about to do. "I don't like this," Griffin said, her voice crackling through the comms. "That ship, it feels wrong. Like it's not even real." Naomi glanced out of the cockpit window, her gaze fixed on the flagship. It shimmered, almost like a mirage, its jagged edges rippling as if the ship itself were constantly shifting, adapting to its surroundings. The energy shields surrounding it were palpable, an invisible force that made the air crackle with tension. "It's not like anything we've faced before," Naomi said. "But we don't have a choice. Stay sharp, everyone." They shot through the atmosphere, the ship's thrusters burning bright against the backdrop of the stars. As they neared the flagship, the massive alien craft seemed to draw them in with its overwhelming presence. For a brief moment, Naomi allowed herself to feel the fear, the realization that they were on the verge of something unprecedented. Then, with a sharp breath, she pushed it aside. There was no room for fear now. There was only the mission. Inside the Xalok flagship, the situation was even worse than Naomi could have imagined. The ship's internal corridors were dark, lit only by pulsing blue lights that seemed to flicker erratically. The air was thick with an unnatural hum, vibrating at a frequency that sent shivers down Naomi's spine. As they moved deeper into the ship, the feeling of unease grew, amplified by the cold, metallic walls that seemed to close in around them. "Stay quiet," Naomi whispered to her team, her voice low and urgent. "We don't know what we're dealing with inside. Move fast, take out any Xalok sentries, and get to the command center. The longer we're here, the worse it gets." Lieutenant Griffin nodded and led the way, her weapon raised as they entered the darkened halls of the flagship. The silence was deafening, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines and the occasional distant rumble of the ongoing battle outside. But something was off. Naomi could feel it in the air, the sense that they were being watched. Then, out of nowhere, a loud screech pierced the stillness. A Xalok sentinel appeared around a corner, its glowing red eyes locking onto the team. Its skin was slick and translucent, its body rippling with strange energy. It was unlike any creature Naomi had ever seen, bigger, faster, more deadly than anything the Earth forces had encountered before. "Ambush!" Naomi shouted, and in that moment, all hell broke loose. Griffin opened fire, her weapon discharging with a deafening roar. The Xalok sentinel's energy shield flickered and crackled, absorbing the impact of the blast. Naomi's heart raced as she watched the creature charge, moving with a terrifying speed. It leaped toward them, its claws extended, and Naomi knew there was no time to hesitate. Move! She yelled, diving to the side as the creature slashed through the air where she had just been standing. The entire team scattered, firing wildly as they tried to avoid being torn apart by the Xalok's unnatural strength. But even as they fought, Naomi's mind stayed focused on the bigger picture. The flagship was still theirs to conquer, and they couldn't afford to lose momentum now. Outside, the battle was only growing more intense. Earth's fleet was engaged in a desperate struggle, but the Xalok ships were adapting, countering their every move. Naomi could see the tide beginning to shift, and with each passing moment, the stakes grew higher. The team pressed forward, pushing through the flagship's winding corridors, evading more sentinels as they neared the central command room. Every step felt like a race against time, and Naomi could feel the pressure mounting. They were close now, just a few more turns, and they would be at the heart of the Xalok's operations. But as they reached the final door, Naomi knew one thing for certain: the hardest part was about to begin. In this final, crucial moment, everything would come down to their ability to strike fast and strike hard. They had one shot. There was no turning back now. As Naomi prepared to breach the door, she felt the weight of the universe pressing down on her. The battle for Earth was no longer just about survival, it was about proving that humanity could stand toe-to-toe with the most advanced species in the galaxy and come out victorious. It was time to show the Xalok that Earth would never, ever give up. Breaking the heart of the beast. The door to the central command room slid open with a low hum, revealing a vast chamber unlike anything Naomi had ever seen. It was a cavernous, dimly lit space, filled with strange, organic-looking structures that pulsated with an eerie glow. The walls of the command center seemed to breathe, a testament to the Xalok's unnerving blend of technology and biology. The air was thick with an alien scent, metallic and sour, mingling with the low hum of energy currents that seemed to flow through the ship's very bones. Naomi's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped into the room, the team following close behind. The silence was deafening, but it was the kind of silence that was pregnant with danger. She could feel eyes on her, though no one was visible. The command center was clearly designed to intimidate, to make those who entered feel small, insignificant. But Naomi refused to let that fear seep in. This was her chance to end this war, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. Spread out, she whispered to the team, keeping her voice steady. We need to find the core. I'll handle the controls. Everyone else, cover me. Griffin nodded, her rifle at the ready as she moved to the far side of the room, her eyes scanning every corner. The rest of the team did the same, weapons raised, staying alert to the slightest movement. Naomi approached the central control panel, a massive structure in the center of the room. It looked like something out of a nightmare, its surface covered in shifting black and purple tendrils that seemed to reach out, as if alive. Her hand hovered over it, uncertain for a moment, before she pressed down on the sleek surface. A series of lights flickered on, bathing the room in an otherworldly glow, and the hum grew louder. The tendrils receded slightly, revealing intricate symbols etched into the panel's surface. Naomi's heart skipped a beat. This was the Xalok's main control system, and it was linked directly to their fleet. If she could disable it, they'd lose their strategic advantage. Commander, Griffin's voice crackled through the comms. We're not alone. I've spotted multiple hostiles, Xalok reinforcements. They're on their way. Naomi's pulse quickened. The Xalok weren't just going to let them have this ship, they were sending everything they had. Her eyes flicked back to the control panel. She didn't have much time. Without hesitation, she activated a sequence on the panel, inputting the data they had managed to extract from the Xalok ship earlier. The alien symbols flashed in response, but then, nothing. Naomi frowned. Something was wrong. This wasn't going to be as simple as she had hoped. Suddenly, the chamber's lights dimmed even further, and a voice, cold and calculating, echoed through the room. Human. You are far too late. Naomi's heart froze. She recognized that voice. A figure stepped forward from the shadows, its tall, thin form almost blending with the dark surroundings. The creature's eyes glowed an eerie red, its skin a smooth, unnatural shade of gray, marked with intricate patterns that glowed faintly. It was one of the Xalok High Commanders, the one who had led the first wave of the invasion. "Commander Valdar," Naomi muttered, her hands instinctively reaching for her sidearm. "I should have known you'd be here." Valdar's lips curled into a cruel smile. "You think you can defeat us? That your human ingenuity will somehow overpower the might of the Xalok? You are mistaken. We have seen civilizations rise and fall, yours will be no different." Naomi steadied her breath. This was it. The final confrontation. "We've already won," Naomi said, her voice unwavering. "Your fleet is scattered, your forces are in disarray. And you," she nodded toward the control panel, "are the one who's out of time." Valdar's smile faltered, his eyes narrowing. "You think the war is over? That you have succeeded?" "No, Commander, you are merely a pawn in a much larger game. And your victory is only temporary." The ground beneath them trembled suddenly, and Naomi's heart leapt into her throat. The ship was beginning to destabilize. The energy surge from the control panel was triggering something far worse than what they had anticipated. "The ship is reacting to your actions," Valdar hissed, his voice dripping with venom. "You have set into motion a chain of events you cannot control. The Xalok will not be defeated. We are inevitable." Naomi didn't have time to argue. She glanced over at Griffin, who was now engaged in a fierce firefight with a group of Xalok soldiers that had entered the room. The sounds of gunfire echoed through the chamber, but the humans were outnumbered and outgunned. The Xalok forces were relentless. "Lieutenant!" Naomi shouted, but her voice was drowned out by the chaos. She was about to make a move toward the fight when a sharp pain shot through her side. She gasped, her vision blurring slightly as she glanced down to see a streak of red staining her uniform. Valdar had thrown something, a device that had embedded itself in her side. "No!" Naomi shouted, clutching at the wound. "You're not going to win, Valdar." The Xalok commander's expression was unreadable as he advanced slowly, his hands raised as if to savor the moment. "This battle is over, human. And you will not be the last to fall. Our empire is eternal." But Naomi wasn't finished yet. She fought through the pain, her mind focused only on the task ahead. She couldn't let Earth fall, not after everything they had sacrificed. The message her mother had passed on to her was clear: survival is resistance. With a surge of energy, she pulled herself to her feet, her weapon raised, aiming squarely at Valdar. She fired. The shot rang out, piercing the Xalok commander's chest. But Valdar didn't fall. Instead, his body rippled, his form warping and shifting into something even more terrifying. Naomi's eyes widened in shock. The Xalok weren't just one species, they were a collective of beings, constantly shifting and evolving. This wasn't just a commander, it was something much larger, much more dangerous. "Commander." Griffin's voice finally broke through the haze of the battle. "We need to fall back. This whole place is coming apart." Naomi's heart raced. The ship was about to collapse on itself. There was no time left. She had one final option. She took a deep breath and reached for the detonator she'd hidden earlier. "This ends now," she whispered, activating the self-destruct sequence. The room lit up with an ominous glow as alarms blared, warning of impending doom. With the countdown ticking in the background, Naomi turned to the team. "We need to leave. Now." As the walls began to tremble violently, Naomi and her team sprinted toward the exit. But Valdar wasn't finished yet. The Xalok leader surged forward, a terrifying shape emerging from the wreckage of his body. It was huge, almost incomprehensible in its size and form, a mass of swirling energy in shifting tendrils. "You cannot escape." Valdar's voice boomed, but Naomi didn't stop. They ran, the self-destruct countdown echoing in their ears, and with every step, they felt the universe itself growing colder, darker. But they had no choice. This was humanity's final stand, and they would not surrender. With seconds to spare, Naomi and her team leaped into the escape pod, the hatch closing behind them. The ship erupted in a blinding flash of light, the shockwave knocking them off their feet as the flagship disintegrated into the void of space. As they drifted away, Naomi looked out of the window at the remnants of the Xalok fleet. It was done. The heart of the beast had been broken. But they weren't finished yet. The war for Earth was far from over. The real battle, Naomi knew, was just beginning. The heart of resistance. The escape pod jolted violently, throwing Naomi and her team against the harnesses holding them in place. The blast from the Xalok flagship's destruction had sent shockwaves through space, and the pod was caught in the ripple of that cosmic fury. For a moment, everything was chaos, the sounds of alarms blaring, the lights flickering, the hum of the pod systems struggling to stay online. Naomi's head throbbed from the impact, but she forced herself to focus. Stay conscious. Stay focused. The team was still alive, and that was what mattered most. Report. Naomi barked, her voice cutting through the disorientation. Here, Commander, Griffin's voice was sharp through the comms. We're alive, but the pod's damaged. The autopilot's offline. We're drifting. Naomi's eyes snapped open. She wasn't going to let this end in a drift. She had to get them out of here. Shut down the emergency alarms, she ordered. And reroute all power to the thrusters. We're not waiting for rescue. Understood, Griffin replied. Naomi looked over to the rest of her team, all of whom were still recovering from the blast. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to breathe, even as the crushing weight of what had just happened began to sink in. They had destroyed the flagship, dealt the Xalok a significant blow, but the cost was immense. The Xalok might have been shaken, but they weren't beaten. We're not done yet, Naomi muttered, as she unstrapped herself and moved to the damaged control panel. This is just the beginning. It was then that she noticed the empty space around her, the absence of the familiar weight of Commander Valdar's menacing presence. Had they won? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sudden movement of the pod, as Griffin took over manual control. Commander, the autopilot's fried, but I'm guiding us toward the nearest jump point. It's going to be rough, but it's the only way to escape the Xalok's reinforcements. Naomi nodded, her mind racing. The Xalok might have been dealt a blow, but they weren't the only threat humanity had to face. She had seen the growing unrest among Earth's allies, the fractures in the coalition that had once stood united. They had to hold it together. If humanity fell to infighting, then the war was already lost. As the escape pod shook once again, Naomi secured herself in her seat and opened the encrypted communication link to Earth Command. Earth Command, this is Commander Naomi Hart. We've neutralized the Xalok flagship, but the battle is far from over. We need reinforcements, immediately. The Xalok are regrouping, and we're about to face an onslaught unlike anything we've seen before. The static crackled on the line before a voice responded, a voice she didn't recognize. Commander Hart, we've been following your progress. Earth Command has received your transmission, but we've got a problem. Naomi's heart sank. What kind of problem? The coalition, it's breaking apart. We've got factions pulling in different directions. Some are advocating for peace talks, others, well, they're not as committed to the fight as you are. Naomi's grip on the seat tightened. This is not the time for division. We need unity. The Xalok will exploit any weakness. There was a long pause on the other end, and then the voice replied with a cold, almost regretful tone. We understand, Commander. But Earth is no longer the focal point of our priorities. Some are calling for a ceasefire, claiming that the war is damaging Earth's economy beyond repair. The political pressure, it's mounting. Naomi's mind raced. She knew Earth's fragile state all too well. The war had taken a toll on the planet. Resources were stretched thin, and the cost of war had left a scar on the global economy. But to back down now? After everything they had fought for? She inhaled sharply, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. I don't care about politics. I care about survival. We are humanity's last line of defense. If we stop now, Earth will fall, and the Xalok won't hesitate to wipe us out. The voice on the other end remained silent for a moment. Then, the response came, quieter but with resolve. Understood, Commander. We'll do what we can on our end, but we need you to hold the line out there. You're humanity's best hope. The transmission cut off abruptly, and Naomi leaned back in her seat, the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. The path ahead was uncertain, but there was no turning back now. She wasn't going to let her world fall into chaos. Griffin, Naomi said, her voice steely, set the course for the nearest Xalok base. We've got work to do. As the pod entered the wormhole, the stars around them twisted and bent in unnatural ways. Naomi's stomach churned as the pod shot through the passage, moving faster than light. The reality-altering experience was one she had grown accustomed to in the heat of battle, but the unknown still had a way of unsettling her. After what seemed like an eternity, the pod shot out of the wormhole, entering a star system unlike any they had encountered before. The sky was a strange violet, with two enormous moons hanging in the distance, casting an eerie glow over the barren surface of the planet below. The Xalok's main base was hidden here, inside the hollowed-out core of an ancient asteroid belt. It was a fortress built into the very heart of the rocks, nearly invisible unless you knew where to look. It was the perfect location to regroup, to rebuild their forces in secret. Naomi wasn't sure how long they had before the Xalok realized their escape pod had made it through, but she didn't intend to waste any time. They needed to strike fast, and they needed to strike hard. Reroute all power to the shields, Naomi ordered, her eyes scanning the new horizon. We're going in hot. The team was ready. They'd fought through impossible odds before, and they'd do it again. As the pod descended toward the rocky surface of the planet, Naomi's mind raced. The fight wasn't just about defeating the Xalok, it was about showing the universe that humanity would not bow down. Humanity was strong. Humanity was resilient. And humanity would never surrender. The pod touched down with a heavy thud, and Naomi opened the hatch, stepping out into the unknown. The battle was about to begin, and Naomi Hart was ready to lead her people to victory. Into the heart of the enemy. The air on the barren planet felt heavy and dry, the dust swirling in the faint wind that howled across the desolate surface. Naomi and her team disembarked from the pod, their boots crunching against the cracked ground beneath them. The stars above were strange, their dim glow reflecting off the dark, jagged rock formations that stretched out like spires toward the sky. The planet felt almost alive, but in a way that was dark and foreboding. Stay sharp, Naomi ordered, her voice firm but carrying the weight of a leader who knew the stakes. We don't know what we're walking into, but we need to move quickly. The Xalok could be tracking us already. The team moved forward, weapons ready, scanning the horizon for any signs of enemy presence. Griffin led the way, his hand hovering over the controls of their portable scanner, checking for energy signatures that might indicate hidden installations or patrolling forces. Behind him, Naomi, Samira, and the others stayed close, each of them alert and prepared for anything. They approached the edge of a deep ravine, the ground splitting into a series of cliffs and canyons that seemed to stretch endlessly. Naomi checked her map, confirming that they were on track for the Xalok base. It wasn't just any base, it was their last major stronghold in this sector, a facility rumored to hold advanced technology and perhaps even the Xalok leaders themselves. As they descended into the ravine, a distant rumble reached their ears. A low, mechanical hum. Naomi held up a fist, signaling for the team to halt. Everyone froze, eyes scanning the rocky walls that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. "Do you hear that?" Griffin whispered, his voice barely audible. Naomi nodded, her instincts on high alert. "I hear it. It's coming from deeper in the ravine." They crept forward cautiously, the sound growing louder with each step. The ravine twisted and turned, narrowing until it opened up into a wide, hollowed-out cavern. Inside, the cavern was filled with the sound of clanging metal, the hum of machines, and the occasional hiss of some alien mechanism. The walls were covered in strange symbols, etched into the rock with precision and care, glowing faintly under the dim lighting. "This is it," Naomi whispered, her eyes narrowing as she took in the sight. Before them stood the entrance to the Xalok facility, a massive structure built into the heart of the ravine, its walls bristling with weaponry and surveillance equipment. The facility was a fortress, designed to withstand the harshest of attacks. "We're going to need a plan," Samira muttered, her eyes scanning the perimeter. "If we just charge in, we'll get slaughtered." Naomi nodded, calculating their options. They had only one shot at this. "We go in stealthily. We use the shadows, find a way inside without being detected. Once we're in, we disable the security systems and hit them hard. Fast, clean, and efficient." Griffin adjusted his weapon. "And if we get caught?" "We fight our way out," Naomi said, her voice resolute. "But we're not getting caught." The team spread out, moving through the rocky landscape like shadows, using the natural cover to avoid detection. Naomi's heart raced as they approached the entrance, the tension thick in the air. Every moment counted, and the more time they spent out here, the more likely it was that the Xalok would realize they were here. They reached a large set of reinforced doors that led into the base. The door was heavily guarded, but there was an air vent above it, an access point that wasn't visible to the guards below. "Griffin, can you hack into the system?" Naomi asked. He nodded. "Give me a minute." He pulled out a small device and began working quickly, his fingers moving with practiced speed. Naomi watched the guards, their silhouettes barely visible in the dim light, as Griffin worked his magic. The tension was unbearable. Any moment now, they could be spotted. Finally, Griffin smiled. "Got it. The door's unlocked. Let's move." The team slipped inside, one by one, the door closing silently behind them. The interior of the base was a maze of metal corridors and large, open rooms filled with machinery. The walls hummed with energy, the air thick with the scent of alien technology. Naomi's eyes darted back and forth, her mind calculating their next move. "Stay close," she whispered. "We need to find the central control room. If we can take that out, we'll cripple their defenses." They moved cautiously through the base, sticking to the shadows. They encountered a few guards, but each time, Naomi and her team dealt with them swiftly and quietly, taking them out before they could raise an alarm. It felt almost too easy, as if the base had been left vulnerable on purpose. Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Why weren't they encountering more resistance? As they approached the central control room, Naomi felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. The silence was eerie, and there was an unsettling stillness in the air. She motioned for the team to stop, her eyes narrowing. "Something's wrong," she muttered. Griffin frowned. "I don't like this. There's no sign of anyone around. It's too quiet." Naomi's instincts screamed at her to turn back, but they were too close to their goal. "We keep moving. We can't back down now." They pressed on, entering the central control room with weapons raised. But as the door slid open, they were met with an unexpected sight. The room was empty. Too empty. In the center of the room stood a lone figure, tall, cloaked in dark, flowing armor, and exuding a presence that sent a shiver down Naomi's spine. The figure turned slowly, revealing the unmistakable features of an alien being. Its skin was a deep violet, the markings on its face glowing faintly as if it were alive with some sort of dark energy. Naomi's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just any alien. This was the leader of the Xalok, the one they had been hunting. "You're too late," the figure spoke, its voice cold and mocking. "The Xalok Empire does not fear you, human. You will die here, and your pathetic little war will end with you." Naomi's pulse quickened as the room seemed to close in around her. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a battle for the future of the galaxy. "Not today," Naomi growled, raising her weapon. "Not while I'm still standing." The calm before the storm. The weight of the mission settled heavily on Naomi's shoulders. Their victory over the Xalok forces had been hard-earned, but it was nothing compared to the storm that awaited them. The final push to end the Xalok Empire's reign of terror had arrived. It was do or die. In the cramped briefing room aboard their ship, the Aurora, Naomi sat at the head of the table, looking over her team. Griffin, Samira, and the rest of the crew were gathered, each lost in their thoughts as the hum of the ship's engines filled the background. "The Xalok leader is on the other side of that door," Naomi began, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, but she could see the tension in their eyes. They had fought through so much already, but this final mission would test everything they had learned, every ounce of strength they had left. "This is the end of the road for them, or it's the end for us." She met Griffin's gaze. His usually confident demeanor had softened, but he nodded in agreement. They all knew what was at stake. "We've already taken down the outer defenses," Griffin said, tapping a holographic map on the table. "The main power core is in the central command tower. Once we're in, we breach and destroy it. That'll cut off their ability to regroup. But we won't have much time after that before the whole place comes down." Naomi nodded. "We know. But this isn't just about destroying their base. We're taking out the leader, the source of their power. If we do that, we stop their whole empire from advancing." Samira, usually the most skeptical of the group, leaned forward. "You're sure about this? I mean, these Xalok, they don't play fair. The leader's supposed to be able to manipulate reality," Naomi finished for her. "Yeah, we know. But we've trained for this. We've learned their tactics. We know how to counter their energy fields. We're not going in blind." There was a brief pause as the team exchanged looks, the weight of the moment hanging in the air. It was clear that while everyone was prepared, the fear of facing a nearly invincible enemy was real. Naomi stood, the sound of her boots clicking against the floor echoing in the room. She walked toward the window, looking out at the endless expanse of space. Her fingers tightened into a fist. "We've lost too much already," she said, her voice quieter now. "We've seen entire systems fall to the Xalok. Countless people, worlds, families. We can't let this keep going. Not for them. Not for anyone else. This ends today." Griffin stood next to her. "We're with you, Naomi. All the way." Naomi looked at each member of her team in turn. They had been through so much, battling alien forces, surviving harsh conditions, and even questioning their own strength at times. But in this moment, there was no doubt. No fear. "We make history today," Naomi said, her eyes locking with Griffin's. "But we do it together." The infiltration. As the Aurora made its descent toward the Xalok base, the team began gearing up. The ship's docking bay was a flurry of activity as they checked their weapons, prepared their equipment, and finalized the plan. Naomi's mind was racing, but her hands were steady as she suited up. "Remember," she reminded them, as they donned their tactical suits, "the moment we enter the facility, everything changes. We'll be in enemy territory. Expect traps, expect reinforcements. But no matter what happens, our objective is clear. We get in, we destroy the core, and we end the Xalok threat." Samira, ever the calm strategist, adjusted her rifle. And we make sure we stay on the move. If we're seen, they'll throw everything at us. We need to stay unpredictable. Griffin smirked, his usual confidence returning. Let's make them regret ever crossing paths with humanity. The countdown timer on the ship's dashboard clicked over to 0. The Aurora touched down silently on the outskirts of the Xalok base. The team disembarked, moving swiftly toward the main entrance. The facility was a massive, imposing structure of black metal and glowing violet energy, a stark reminder of the alien power that had dominated the galaxy for so long. Naomi took the lead, signaling for the team to follow. They moved with purpose, the sounds of their boots muffled by the low hum of the facility's energy field. As they approached the entrance, Naomi's heart raced. This is it. No turning back now. A sudden explosion rang out, and the door to the base slammed open, revealing a corridor filled with Xalok soldiers. The first wave came charging at them, weapons raised. The team didn't hesitate. They opened fire in unison, their weapons blazing. The Xalok soldiers were formidable, but humanity's ingenuity and determination were far more dangerous. Naomi and Griffin cleared the front lines with practiced ease, while Samira covered their rear. Each shot they took was precise, every movement efficient. It was a brutal fight, but it was just the beginning. The team fought their way through wave after wave of Xalok soldiers, navigating the labyrinthine hallways of the base, avoiding traps, and breaking through security systems. They were close now. The heart of the Xalok Empire was within their reach. The final push. Finally, they arrived at the central command room. The doors were sealed, but Naomi didn't hesitate. With a single blow, she breached the entrance. Inside, the Xalok leader stood waiting, flanked by several elite guards. The alien's presence was overwhelming, its violet eyes flashing with fury. You think you can defeat me? It hissed. Naomi stepped forward, her expression unflinching. We already have. As her team moved to secure the perimeter, the final battle began. The final battle, the last stand against the Xalok. The air inside the Xalok Central Command room felt thick, heavy with the weight of the impending battle. The glowing violet lights flickered eerily, casting long shadows across the walls. The Xalok leader, a towering figure draped in dark, shimmering armor, stood at the far end of the chamber. Its eyes, glowing with a sinister purple light, focused on Naomi and her team. You should have stayed hidden, the Xalok leader's voice echoed through the room, a low and menacing hum that reverberated in their bones. The air seemed to warp around it, twisting with power. You cannot defeat me. You will be forgotten, just like all those who came before you. Naomi stood tall, her rifle steady in her hands. Her pulse was steady, her mind clear. She could feel the eyes of her team on her, but she wasn't afraid. The mission had led them here, and now there was no turning back. This was the end, for better or worse. We're not here to be forgotten, Naomi said, her voice firm and defiant. We're here to make sure your empire falls, once and for all. The Xalok leader's lips twisted into a cruel smile. How quaint. You think humanity has the power to stand against me? Against the might of an empire that has ruled the galaxy for millennia? Naomi didn't respond. Instead, she raised her hand, signaling her team to spread out. They knew their roles, their mission. They had trained for this moment, and now, they would face it together. Griffin, Naomi said softly, barely audible over the hum of the energy field around them. Samira. Stay sharp. We'll need to disrupt their shields first. We can't afford to give them any chance to retaliate. Griffin nodded, his expression unreadable. Samira, ever the calm strategist, was already moving into position with a focused look in her eyes. Naomi felt a surge of gratitude for her team. They had been through so much together, and now, it was time to see it through. The Xalok leader raised its hand, and the room seemed to pulse with energy. A surge of purple light blasted from its palm, striking the ground in front of Naomi. The floor cracked and splintered, sending shockwaves through the room. Naomi barely managed to dodge in time, her boots skidding across the floor as she rolled out of the way. "Move," she shouted, and the team sprang into action. Griffin's rifle barked, sending a burst of energy into the Xalok's shield. The beam fizzled against the alien armor, but the shield flickered momentarily. Samira, standing at a strategic angle, fired a second blast that connected with the leader's energy field, causing it to flicker again. Naomi saw the opening. "Now!" Naomi yelled, and without hesitation, the team unleashed a full volley of firepower. Blasts of energy filled the room, striking the leader from all sides. For a moment, the Xalok leader staggered, its shield faltering under the relentless assault. The alien's eyes flared with fury, its body rippling with energy. "Enough," it snarled, raising both hands high into the air. A storm of purple energy crackled around the leader, distorting the room as reality itself began to warp. Time seemed to slow, and Naomi felt her body tense as the air grew heavier. For a moment, everything stood still. Then the leader shouted, and the room exploded in a burst of light and force. The walls cracked, and the floor beneath them began to crumble. Naomi's instincts kicked in. "Move, move, move," she shouted, pulling Griffin and Samira to the side as debris fell around them. The team scattered, using the broken walls for cover as the room continued to tremble from the Xalok's power. But even as the base seemed to implode around them, Naomi's focus remained sharp. They couldn't let up now. This was their moment. The Xalok leader, towering and furious, lifted one hand and directed a massive beam of energy toward them. It struck the ground with a deafening roar, causing the room to shake violently. Naomi gritted her teeth, diving to the side as the energy beam scorched the floor where she had just been standing. "We need to shut it down," Naomi said through clenched teeth. "Griffin, Samira, get to the control console. We need to override their systems and destabilize the core. I'll keep it distracted." Griffin and Samira nodded, instantly darting for the control panel that was just ahead. Naomi turned to face the Xalok leader, who was now moving toward her with terrifying speed, its glowing eyes fixed on her. "You're a stubborn little thing, aren't you?" the leader hissed. "You think you can change the course of history with mere determination? You are nothing." The alien's voice rumbled with power, and Naomi felt the floor beneath her tremble as it prepared another strike. But she didn't flinch. She couldn't afford to. Drawing her pistol, she fired a precise shot aimed at the leader's exposed energy core. The shot hit its mark, causing the alien to stumble back, roaring in pain. But it was still standing, still dangerous. "Griffin! Samira! Now!" Naomi yelled. From the corner of her eye, she saw Griffin and Samira reaching the control panel. Samira quickly accessed the systems, her fingers flying across the holographic display. A deep mechanical whine echoed as the power systems began to destabilize. "Got it," Samira said, her voice calm but tight with urgency. "The core is offline. We've got 2 minutes before this whole place goes critical." The Xalok leader turned its fury on them, its eyes glowing brighter than ever. "No. You will not win." Naomi didn't waste a second. She sprinted toward the leader, dodging another burst of energy that slammed into the wall behind her. In one fluid motion, she dove toward the alien's massive body, closing the distance between them. The Xalok leader, distracted by the growing instability of the base, hesitated just for a moment. Naomi seized the opportunity. She leaped onto the leader's back, her hands reaching for the energy regulator near its neck. She felt the cold metal beneath her fingers, her heart pounding in her chest. With a final, desperate pull, she ripped the energy regulator free. The leader let out a deafening shriek, its body writhing in agony as the power source sputtered and died in Naomi's grip. The leader collapsed to the ground with a thunderous crash, the once unstoppable force now reduced to a broken shell of its former power. The entire room seemed to pulse with the echoes of its defeat. "We did it," Naomi whispered, panting with exhaustion as she stood over the fallen alien. The room around them was still shaking, but the worst was over. Griffin and Samira joined her, their faces a mixture of relief and exhaustion. They knew the battle wasn't over, they had to escape before the base collapsed. "Let's go," Griffin urged, turning toward the exit. "We don't have much time." Naomi nodded. "Move out, everyone. We finish this together." As the team made their way through the crumbling corridors of the Xalok base, the air thick with dust and chaos, they couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. They had defeated an empire. They had stood against the darkness and come out victorious. And though the battle was won, the war was over only because of their courage, their resilience, and their unbreakable unity. Humanity had proved that it could stand against the stars, and triumph.